It's time to turn up the heat on the Roof It Right hot seat. Roof it right so you can sleep at night.
I think we're going to need a bigger boat.
I think so.
I think we're going to need a bigger boat. We got one of the great ones here with us. Arguably, Mr. Philadelphia in some ways, right? Ron Jaworski helped get the Eagles to a Super Bowl in the early 1980s, was a longtime co-owner of the Philadelphia Soul. And honestly, and I'm not just saying this because Jaws is on the line with us right now, but I've never bumped into anybody who says, you know what, Jaws has this great public personality, but, you know, behind the scenes, he's a real jerk. Everybody loves Jaws that I've ever talked to, including us here. Ron Jaworski joining Mike Dempsey and Tony Smith on Jaguars Today. Good morning, Jaws. How are you, sir?
Mike, Tony, it's great to be with you guys, and I love the intro music, man. It got me fired up. You know, I'm ready to go see the movie again.
You should be walking around with like a little device that just plays that wherever you go. Anytime you enter a room, man, that should be your thing.
It's kind of funny, you know. I do a lot of public speaking, things like that. And they always seem to use that music to intro me somehow, some way. But it is kind of cool. So
well, you know,
I have to thank Doug Collins, the old basketball coach, Sixers player, because he's the one that gave me the nickname.
Well, you know, worse things to be known as, Jaws.
That's right.
And you're known as that affectionately, obviously, and you've been jawing about football for a long, long time as well. We know you're plugged into all things Philadelphia, so we thought who better to speak with to get an opinion about Doug Pederson and the fit that he will make here in Jacksonville. Obviously, a Super Bowl winning coach in Philadelphia. Jaws, your initial impression when you heard Doug Pederson would be the guy to help resurrect this franchise, how did you think the fit would go?
Why did it take so long to hire him, quite honestly? You know, I've known Doug Pederson since the early 90s. I know the character, the man, the person he is, the coach that he is. I was on the Eagles selection committee, and we chose Doug Pederson to be our head coach, and that worked out very well. We all have a Super Bowl championship ring on our finger because of that. And that's why I say, why did it take so long? I'm just a firm believer that when a coach has a Super Bowl ring in his finger recently, by the way, and he walks in that room, you get instant credibility. And I've had many conversations with Dick Vermeil through the years, and when he got that ring in with the Rams when they were in St. Louis, and he got that Kansas City job a few years later, he walked in that room and the players saw that ring, and you get instant respect and credibility because you've been there, you've done that, you've led a football team to the promised land. Doug Pederson has done that recently, and I think that goes an awful long way.
Jaws, can you offer us any insight about what happened between Doug Pederson and Carson Wentz in that 2020 season that eventually led to both of them parting ways, with Doug Pederson with the organization and Carson Wentz being traded away?
I am still in shock from that separation, and I was a huge Carson Wentz fan as well. But I will add this: I really think the pandemic had such an impact on not only the Philadelphia Eagles but every team around the National Football League. You know, sometimes our memory is very short, and we kind of forget what happened in that 2020 season when there were no practices, you couldn't get together. It was an awful time. And I said, even the 7 coaches that got fired in 2020 should not have been fired. It wasn't fair to judge a coach's performance based on what they had to go through. And I've been public here in Philadelphia with my feelings as well. I thought it was a mistake that the Eagles fired Doug Pederson, but there clearly was a disconnect with Carson Wentz. And you know, eventually it'll come out. But till this day, I've spoken to Doug about it. You know, he hasn't given me what I would say would be a clear-cut answer of what happened. I think to a certain degree, he's not sure what happened. I'm not sure the front office knows really what happened, but there was a disconnect, and it impacted the football team. And I think the Eagles reacted or overreacted to the situation.
Talking here with the great Ron Jaworski. Jaws, you know, prior to the disconnect, Wentz in 2017 was playing at an MVP level and was discussed quite frequently as one of the leading candidates. He gets hurt. Nick Foles comes in, and the magic carpet ride concludes with the Lombardi Trophy being hoisted. So we're hoping that we've got a guy here in Jacksonville that, despite a rough rookie season, has a ton of raw potential. in terms of being a guy who can bring it out in a quarterback specifically, tell us why you think Doug Pederson is that guy.
Well, we always use the word fit. That's kind of the common used word when everyone talks about the quarterback and the head coach of the situation each of them are in. This is a good fit. There's no doubt Trevor Lawrence has superstar ability. Now, there's not a shred of doubt in my mind. But I've seen a lot of guys, I've said that about a lot of guys that get in a situation that doesn't work for them. And, you got to have the quarterback, but football is consummate team game. Doug can flat out coach. He can X and O. He can design plays. He can call plays. He'll probably shake some people up because he's an analytics guy and he'll do some crazy things. But for percentage-wise, at the end of the year, they usually work out for him. Think of the Philly special play. I'm not sure there's a coach in all of football that would have the courage to make that play in the Super Bowl before the half. He did. And it worked that time, so you're a hero. But he's not afraid to make the difficult decision when it comes to play calling or designing an offense. I think Trevor Lawrence will be in a good situation. Now, I'll be blatantly honest with you. When you look at the Jaguars right now, 11 draft choice at $57 million under the cap, that's a good situation for a coach to come into. However, that being said, this is where the harmony with the front office comes into play. You've got to see this draft through the same eyes for every player you select. And I'm not sure that's going to happen. I'm not saying it won't, but I don't see the front office, how it's formed yet. I don't see his coaching staff formed yet. So it's difficult for me to give you a definite opinion. But I knew one thing, Doug will be very strong in his opinions.
Jaws, what were your thoughts on Trevor Lawrence while we were going into the draft last year and through that process? And what are your thoughts on him after seeing him play for a year?
Yeah, I think you can probably go through my comments on the work that I did for the draft, and clearly Trevor Lawrence was a guy. I remember watching him his freshman year at Clemson. I thought this guy had superstar ability, and he hasn't let anyone down. But we all know you got to have those horses up front, and you look at all the teams that progress through the playoffs. You've got to protect the quarterback, and quite honestly, it's one of my concerns in the Super Bowl because Joe Burrow's had a great year, but man, he's been beat up an awful lot because the right side of the offensive line in Cincinnati is mediocre at best. So you've got to have the offensive line. And the one thing I know Doug relishes, those big horses up front. He's going to work hard to put the guys in front. And, ETN will come back next year, so you got to believe that will solidify the running back position. So, hey, solidify the offensive line, get those trenches taken care of. And I think it can be a quick 2-year turnaround for the Jaguars.
Oh, well, in addition to the offensive line, Jaws, this team needs more playmakers as well. They need more weapons for Trevor Lawrence. And, there are a lot of names that look like they could be attractive on the free agent market, but we all know how that goes. A lot of them will get contract extensions with their existing teams or be franchise tagged or what have you. So the market's not going to be as good as it looks at the moment. We saw the Bengals, who are now in the Super Bowl, kind of prioritize pass catcher over protection in the case of Jamar Chase. I'm not saying there's a Jamar Chase in the draft, but how do you balance that out as you're trying to build around a quarterback, offensive line versus weapons?
Well, I think you could look at an example of the Bengals that you just mentioned. When you get a Jamar Chase, what an impact player he has become. You get a Joe Burrow, what an impact player he has become. But, you've only got so many picks. But this is a good year, for the Jaguars. They can find that wide receiver. They can find that offensive lineman. They can find that edge pass rusher. Those are the kind of things that, when you build a team, you look to do. And it gives them an opportunity to turn it around rather quickly. And with the quarterback, you protect the quarterback and you win in the trenches. I'm a little bit old school when it comes to that. I still believe you got to have those guys in the trenches offensively and defensively. And, you look at these teams that are going to be playing, in the big game on Sunday, they fortified those areas of their offense and defense, and that's why they're still playing.
Jaws, as someone who was part of the process for choosing Doug Pederson as the head coach in Philadelphia several years ago, when you look at Doug Pederson, what are some of the strengths and weaknesses of his as a head coach?
Number one, leadership. He is a very strong leader. He's not going to be a forceful kind of guy where you're going to get these, rah-rah speeches. He's not worried about winning the media. And, hey, let's be realistic here in Philadelphia. I don't think they were totally fair to him when it ended, but that's the way it is. The media now has grown so big. Everyone's looking for an angle of story. And, I don't think Doug was treated fairly toward the end, but he didn't care. He didn't care. He's not trying to win the press conference. He's trying to win in the field. And I'll guarantee if you went through that, talked to players that played for Doug Pederson, their Super Bowl year, that underdog mentality that he stressed to his football team, the players bought in. The existing coach is bought in. He didn't give a damn what anyone else felt. Sometimes people are worried about what people think about them. The only thing that matters are the guys on that roster, on that practice field, in that meeting room, and on the field playing. If they believe in the coach, they will win. And that Eagles team, they don't have to win a Super Bowl, but they went to the playoffs the next 2 years after that guy. So people sometimes tend to forget that, after he got fired. Well, he had a 3-year run, and I think a lot of the issues that they had reason he was fired, there was that miscommunication and lack of connection with the front office, with some board drafting, particularly some wide receivers, that I think hurt the growth of Carson Wentz. So, but when you talk about Doug Pederson, I just see a guy that can lead.
Yeah, ironic that Rick Spielman's name is being mentioned as a possible executive vice president candidate, and he was the beneficiary of those Eagles passing on Justin Jefferson. And Minnesota grabbed him up.
Don't remind the people of Philadelphia that.
No.
They watched Jalen Reagor drop like 2 punts in a playoff game. Trust me, they remember.
Oh, no doubt. A couple more moments here with Ron Jaworski.
And by the way, you mentioned Rick Spielman. I am a obviously I've been around this game for a long time. 17 years as a player, 31 years as an analyst. Rick Spielman is one of those guys that I admire immensely. He's not one of those guys that looks through the headlines. He's a grinder. And if you look at the full body of work in Minnesota under Rick Spielman, he's done a really good job there. So, I like to hear people talk about Rick Spielman getting another opportunity.
Well, it looks like that may come to pass, although, they've got to go through the process of interviewing a number of different candidates. They have expressed a desire to add an executive vice president role to the front office here. Jaws, as well, Doug Pederson said Saturday he intends to call plays here. That doesn't mean the offensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach positions are not going to be immensely important to Trevor Lawrence's development. The name Pep Hamilton has already come up as a potential OC candidate. What are your thoughts on Pep?
I love Pep Hamilton. I go back to this. I was covering sideline games for ESPN, and Pep Hamilton's one of those guys just coming in pretty much as a quality control coach, and he's evolved into a terrific offensive mind. He's done a great job with the quarterback. You've got guys like Andrew Luck that he mentored out in Stanford. He's bounced around as an offensive coordinator, but he knows the quarterback position. Clearly, Pep Hamilton is certainly a guy that deserves an opportunity.
All right, well, Jaws, this is one of the rare years that Tony and I will not be on Radio Row for the Super Bowl, but we know you've got an event in Los Angeles with Mike Ditka coming up, the Ditka and Jaws Cigars with the Stars on February 10th in L.A., and folks can check that out at ditkajawscigars.com. Anything else you want to promote, man? The floor is yours. Anything else you want folks to know about?
I appreciate the opportunity to say that because, Coach Ditka and I have been doing this cigar party at the Super Bowl for 13 years, and we raise money for Gridiron Greats, which is Coach Ditka's charity, and former players that have fallen on hard times. We raise money for them because kind of the Ditka era players we're making the kind of bucks they're making right now, and many of the players are struggling to get on with their lives. So we raise money for Gridiron Greats, and I have my own foundation, Jaws Youth Playbook. It raises money for at-risk youth in our community, build ball fields, practice fields, give kids equipment, nutritious meals. So we formed this partnership, Coach Ditka and I. We get 1,200 of our closest friends to join us and celebrate the game of football at the Super Bowl.
Well, that's awesome. And folks can find out more about your foundation on Twitter as well. At Jaws Youth Play is a good jumping off point to learn more about what Ron Jaworski is up to. But I would say fairly safe to say a glowing recommendation for Doug Pederson as the new head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jaws, we do appreciate your time, and I meant everything I said. You're one of the nice guys in the industry that I've come across, so we certainly appreciate your insight, and enjoy Super Bowl week, and we look forward to catching up with you down the road.
All right. Well, thanks, Mike. Thanks, Tony. I will see you guys at Jacksonville. I'll be down there to visit Coach Pederson, talk some football, and probably play some golf.
All right. We'll count on it. Oh, I don't doubt it, buddy. We'll talk to you soon, Jaws. Thank you.
All right.